Hello, my name is Henriette and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'd love to have you here. This video is all about Halloween, which I absolutely love, and I want to show you how to make some large Halloween props and also some smaller items for indoors. I've been collecting these cloches over the years and I want to show you how you can decorate them in a way that's really interesting and of course spooky. I have found these books in charity shops or thrift stores and I've literally just tied them together a bit like they would have done in the old days. I'm going to place a skull on top, this was a cheap plastic one, and also a little crow. I'm using Spanish moss around the bottom to make it look a bit more spooky and add some interest. And as it is Halloween, of course I'm going to add some spider web and a spider. I'm going to add this old key, and I think it really works in Halloween decorations when you add some older things because it makes it look a bit more spooky and a bit more authentic. Let me know what you think. When you make these tall cloches, it's really important that you add height in your decorations. So I'm using the tops of dried sweet corn to really give it height, and I'm stacking the pumpkins. In order to secure everything, I'm using my hot glue gun, and I'm also using blue tag or elephant snot, I think you call it in the States. And I'm also using wire wherever that is needed. As our house is a Gothic Victorian, I really go to town when it's Halloween. So in this video I want to show you some preparations, and of course in a later video I'm going to show you how I style everything. So here they all come finished, and you'll see that I've done them all slightly differently. I've used old items in a lot of them, like keys, a measuring tape, and also an old watch. I made this little ghost myself, just using some cotton wool balls and some white fabric. These poison bottles are also homemade. They're just old bottles I've sprayed black and then put some labels on. I printed the labels off from Pinterest and they were free. I also just wanted to mention that if you don't have any cloches, you can of course use jars. My next project is an outdoor project, and I'm going to show you how I made these little witches. I made 6 of these little dresses using cheap black fabric, and as you can see I made the arms extra long so that I could tie a knot, and I filled them with bubble wrap. For the body itself I used these very cheap fence posts, bubble wrap and a wire hanger. All these larger decorations and props for outdoors are super expensive in the UK, and it's probably the same everywhere else. So I tend to make my own because it's much cheaper and it's fun to do. I will make sure that I leave all the measurements for the dress and some more instructions in the description box below. For the head I'm going to be using a polystyrene ball, and this one is 16 centimeters in diameter. I then cover the head in burlap, and you can pick this up really cheap on eBay, and it's biodegradable. I use a bit of twine to secure the burlap, and I go around a few times just to make it look a bit more rustic. Using a pair of sharp scissors, I then just go around and trim the burlap to the size that I want. And you can't have a witch without a witch's hat. So I'm filling the hat up with a bit of bubble wrap just to make sure it doesn't collapse. I use little nails to secure the hat, but if you live in a windy place, I would recommend that you also hot glue the hat on. To finish her off, I'm going to put a little bit of twine around her waist. I think she looks nice with a bit of a waist. Finally, I join their hands together using a bit of black twine. And you're going to have to wait to see how they all look until I do my front yard video. So So this next little project is practically free, and I'm using twigs or sticks that are picked up from our little woods at the end of the garden. I had this idea that I could build a little haunted house. Now, I'm no architect, but I did find it the easiest just to use a hot glue gun to put the sticks together. And I'm really loving the dark brown colour of these sticks, and I definitely want to incorporate that into my Halloween theme this year. These little pumpkins came off a candle that I bought last year, and I thought they would look really sweet at the front of my haunted house. I also made a little witch's broom just using a barbecue stick and some twine. Then it was time for an outing because I wanted to build a scarecrow. I don't know what these pieces of wood are called, but basically they've got a pointed end, which is really useful because I want to hammer them into the ground. When I got home, I wanted to attach the shorter stick to the longer stick to create a T shape, which was going to be the basis of my scarecrow. I ended up putting 2 screws in diagonally, and I made sure that I pre-drilled the holes just so I didn't split the wood. I used 2 screws just to make sure there was no movement. But before I get started with his body, I wanted to get started with his head because it needs to dry. So I'm using a wig head, a male wig head, which I'm going to cover with burlap. Now I'm making sure that I use a big enough piece of burlap that there's plenty to spare. I tie around a loosely sort of bit of twine just to help me hold it in place, and then I wet it and I work my way down from the top to the bottom. It's much easier to shape burlap when it's wet, and you can fold it whichever way you like. I'm also using my little sewing pins to help secure everything. As the wig head is polystyrene, they're really easy to put in. Once I'm happy with my folded burlap, I then go over it all with some PVA glue or some school glue. As long as it dries clear, then you can use it. Finally, I wet the rest of his head to flatten out the burlap. Now the head is going to need to dry overnight, so I decided to get started with his body. Now first of all, I'm going to add a little bit of twine just to make it extra secure, my little T-shape, and then I'm going in with bubble wrap, and I'm trying to create a body shape, just an obber body shape. I'm making sure that I tape everything down so that it will never move. And I just keep adding bubble wrap until eventually I end up with the shape that I want. It took a while, but I got there eventually. I wanted to make him an outfit, and I literally searched for cheap black fabric on eBay, and I got a really good deal. So I'm using 2 meters of fabric here. I fold it in half twice to find the center, and then I make a small cut just so that it will fit over the bit of wood. I absolutely love making these props myself. It's so much fun. Let's get this scarecrow dressed. So I just pop the fabric over the top of my frame, making sure that the top bit of wood comes through the hole that I just cut. I add a bit of black Gorilla Tape around the hole just to make sure that the fabric doesn't fray. Next, I wanted to give his outfit a bit of shape, so I'm pinning a shape that I like sort of under his arms just to give him, I don't know, just so he looks a bit more human. And I'm making sure that the fabric is equal on the back and on the front, and that I'm putting the pins through both bits of fabric. Then I hand sew where I'd put the pins. You can't put this through the sewing machine because obviously the wood is in the way. I wasn't 100% happy, so I just added a little stitch on either side just to give him a waist. I wanted my scarecrow to look like he's been outside in the wind for a long time. So I started cutting a fringe, and I'm following the sort of shape that I've made with my sewing, and I'm making sure I don't cut into the sewing. Before I get to where his hands are, I just tie a little bit of twine around and then also fringe the end bits. Once I've cut a fringe in both the front bit of fabric and the back bit of fabric, I wanted to make it look a bit more rough. I mean, Halloween isn't perfect and I don't want this to be. So I'm cutting some of my fringes out and I'm using different angles. I then pull every single fringe through a bit of sandpaper, which is 40 grit. This will make it look really windblown. It's the next day and my scarecrow face has dried and hardened, so I'm removing the pins. And then I just want to highlight some of his features. So I'm starting off with his eyes. I'm going to paint his nose and his mouth. And I'm also just going to do a bit of dry brushing over some of the wrinkles that I've given him, just to make them stand out a little bit and make him look a bit more, I don't know, creepy. I wanted to carry on whilst the paint was drying, and I wondered if I could make a scarecrow hat out of a witch's hat. So I'm going to turn my witch's hat inside out and just sew across it where I'm pointing. And this turned out to be a super fast fix to our hat problem. I'm going to do a quick fitting of this hat. I'm not going to fix it on the head yet, but I decided to also bend the rim of the hat at the front of his face on each side, just to make it look a lot different from a witch's hat. My paint has dried, so I'm just giving my scarecrow face a quick spray with some craft sealer. This is matte. I'm now going to remove the loose bit of twine around his neck because I want to replace it with some more twine, but I'm going to wrap it around loads of times to make it look rustic, a bit like I did the witches. Gosh, he's so handsome, isn't he? I now need to cut a hole in the polystyrene underneath his head so that I can fit him onto the stake. I've made sure that I've measured it out correctly and marked it onto my polystyrene head, and I'm going to be using a scalpel to carefully cut a hole. Finally, I can fit the head onto the body. And I'm doing this because I want to trim the burlap around his neck. It's way too long at the minute. And now the poor scarecrow can finally have his hat. And again, I'm going to fit it using the nails like I did before. And also, if you're in a windy place, I would hot glue it too. And I couldn't resist one last little detail. And I'm just going to hand stitch this one on. Using a club hammer, I'm just going to hammer it into the ground, but you could of course also hammer it into a straw bale. Refit the head and it's all done. Homemade Halloween item I'm going to show you in this video, there will be more, will be a wreath. And whilst I'm making it, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Halloween, or about the history. So Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. Celtic people who lived 2,000 years ago mostly in the area that is now Ireland, the United Kingdom and northern France, celebrated their new year on November the 1st. This day marked the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. Celtic believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to Earth. You will be seeing this wreath again in a future video when I decorate my lounge, because I'm going to hang it above my fireplace. But here it is for now. I also wanted to show you a fun little Halloween bake, and this one is another recipe by Jane's Patisserie, and I will of course link the recipe below in the description box. This time is pumpkin cupcakes. Whilst I'm getting this together and getting them in the oven, I wanted to thank you all for watching this video. I am very grateful that you take the time to do so. It means the world to me. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and comment. It will really help my channel. Both my husband and I absolutely love reading your comments, so please keep them coming. Now back to the baking. I'm going to bake these pumpkin cupcakes in the oven for 18 to 22 minutes. I'm going to check them by sticking a skewer in, and if the skewer comes out clean, well then they're ready. I have a love for baking, so you will often find me in the kitchen baking, I don't know, bread, cakes, biscuits, whatever. I really enjoy it. As the cupcakes have now completely cooled, I'm going to get started on my buttercream, and I'm going to put a little bit to one side as this recipe calls for 2 colours. The main amount of the buttercream is going to be orange and the other bit is going to be green. And now for my favourite bit, which is the decorating. I'm going to start off by piping some orange buttercream onto the cupcakes first. Once I've finished with the orange buttercream, I'm then going to take the bit that I put to one side, add a bit of green food colouring and mix it really well. That is pretty much all from me this week. I'm going to leave you with some videos from the garden where I'm trying to get some of my autumn jobs done. Now I wish you all a happy week, have a great time, and I'll see you soon. Much love from London.